Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to ARMANOgeddon episode number 5. Thank you for listening, and now, thank you for watching. Alright, so, I want to say thank you to all my returning listeners, and now I could use the word viewers as well, since we have the webcam. And to those of you who have never seen me before, I'm sorry to disappoint. But to everybody listening, I say thank you for tuning in for the 5th installment and the first installment of the year 2025 of ARMANOgeddon. Now we are going to establish in this new year that we plan to produce one episode a week. As of right now, the date is Saturday, so be on the lookout for that. And let's just get right into it. Now we're going to start off with our word of the day. This will be our first word of the day of the year. And like always, we are following along with Merriam-Webster-Dictionary.com. And today is January 4th, and for our word of the day, it is fulminate. Now, to fulminate is to complain loudly or angrily about something. Now, the supplemental sentence it provides is, the editorial fulminated against the corruption in the state government that has been recently uncovered. Again, fulminate. Now, we're going to go use our own definition of fulminate. I expect that a lot of my listeners and viewers are fulminating at the amount of time between each release, because I know you guys are anticipating and waiting with vigor, but thank you for being patient. We plan to do a lot of fulminating on this podcast, and we'll see how that goes. All right. Recent news. The University of the World just published a study, and they released an ironclad litmus test for athleticism. Now, the good news for this, folks, is that this test for athleticism involves mild physical exercise or any regimented training. It's a simple idea. It's not concerned with weight. It's not concerned with running. It's concerned with your ability to hop on and hop off a pool float with swiftness and decisiveness. Now, there's a few stipulations. You're not allowed to use a ladder to balance on it, okay? And we want to see clean ons and off. You really want to stick the landing onto the pool float. Now, the type of pool float we're going to be using is those ones that are usually like a big swan that have the multiple handles. It has to be a round bottom. A donut doesn't count. And you also have to be able to mount it sitting on your back, okay? You can't just hop on front forward. You can't belly flop onto the pool float. Now, this is not mine. This is from, again, the University of the World. They just published this litmus test for athleticism. Check it out. Try it out this summer when the weather is warmer. Now, I'm in Miami currently, and the weather is a nice 60 degrees today now, which is a nice temperate climate to be outside in. However, I've noticed it's affected the locals here, and we have lots of people wearing ski hats and really thick jackets, leather jackets, cotton lined jackets, real heavy for the weather. Just an interesting observation talking about the weather. All right, now we're going to be going into what we read recently. Now, the last book I just read, since last episode, I finished up Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, some good ironclad discipline in there related to financial matters. And then for Christmas, I received Shadow and Bone, which covers, which is the first installment of the Grishaverse. It is a fantasy read, pretty good overall. Was not made aware that there was a Netflix show about it. Do not intend to watch a Netflix show ever. However, I do find myself ready to read book 2, not right away. We have some other reads we're going to do in the meantime, which brings me to what I'm currently reading, and that is going to be Little Apples. Is a book of short stories which was given to me, and it is by Anton Chekhov. This is a Russian playwright and a Russian story writer as well. Takes place in about the 1840s to 1850s, a collection of short stories. Now, I'm reading this during my lunch break, and the reason I'm doing this is because while I do enjoy talking with many different people and getting to know one another, I like to do so on a deeper level, and I have a major aversion and disdain for basic small talk. So, this means during my lunch hour, I find myself ensconced in the 7th floor break room where I will be reading. Now, I've opted to read short stories, or at least for this week, because there's a few books I have been given or I've acquired on my own that are tough reads, not in the sense of difficulty, but tough reads to walk around with in public, even though they're just real literature or scientific published books. They might spark some controversy or just give your onlookers a vexed gaze as they watch you reading this. So let's start off with tough reads in public, and we're going to go from the least difficult to the most. We have a few options right here sitting next to me. So we're going to start off with, I don't even know how I acquired this book, but this book is called Disrupt Aging by Joanne Jenkins. Now, pretty lame book. Don't want to read it at this time of my life yet. Maybe I'll skim through it one day. Now, you might be saying, how is this book controversial? Well, I would not read it in the old folks' home. That's really about it, because if you look around, you might say, well, these people probably didn't read this book, so maybe that's why. Maybe we should bring it in there. Anyways, this next book came to me, haven't read it yet. It sounds depressing. Not depressing, but sounds hypocritical. But here we go. So we got Alan Carr's Quit Drinking, a nice wholesome book for people trying to limit their alcohol intake. It's a good thing for anyone trying to improve. However, might be uncomfortable reading this in the public domain, especially if you got a little fucking intoxicated at any Christmas parties this past season. And now we're going to ramp it up with the next installment of our most difficult book to read in public. Now, this one is going to be some real ironclad. I use this word 3 times during this podcast. You would think it's the word of the day, but it is not. Anyways, this is going to be some real disciplined literature called Your Brain on Porn. Interesting read about the modern day effects of pornography. Highly would recommend reading it. Enlightening to say the least. But then we also, but the thing is, you don't want to be caught reading that book in the public domain. It's kind of an awkward thing. Not to mention, I don't think you're going to be turning on any receptionists you may work with if they catch you gazing upon this book during your lunch hour. So keep this one at home. Now, the next book I'm reading, or want to read, was given to me because I asked to read about World War II. So this book was given to me for a Christmas gift. We'll be reading it shortly, right? And I'd be saying, hey, that's great, read about history. Well, the thing is, this book is a fictional book covering a hypothetical timeline where Charles Lindbergh is elected president during World War II. Now you may be saying, wow, that sounds like an interesting and intriguing plot. That's the first thing I thought as well. But the real issue is, and with many other World War II books, is look at this cover right here. You can't walk around with that in a public display. Now you'd be saying, hey, you're being rash, but still, when you go to the bookstore and you buy history books, you gotta try and buy something that cancels it out. You gotta try and buy something very patriotic. If you want to read about, communism or fascism, it's tough to walk around in your office with a big swastika plastered on the book you're reading during your lunch hour. This is some real first world problems. Now, speaking of problems, we're going to segue into advice, and we're going to cover it right here, like we said we would from episode 1. So let's cover some advice. Some advice that you may hear often, popular expression to use, is if you're going to walk on thin ice, you might as well dance. Don't agree with that at all, to say the least. First thing I want to know is, what are you doing on thin ice? Why would you be out on thin ice? Okay, everyone knows if you play pond hockey, you take a rock and you throw it to see if it breaks. Okay, so where are people coming across this thin ice that they feel the need to break out in ecstasy and start fucking busting out the Thriller dance move on thin ice? Not really sure. And why are we dancing? Now you may be saying, obviously, the expression details that, if you're in a sticky situation, you might as well find the joy in it. Or you can just figure out a way of the situation. Why do you need to break out in a footloose routine? Why don't you just solve the problem like an adult and get on with your day? So this episode's going to be, we have one more topic to talk about actually for this episode. We're going to be talking about a personality test. Now, I took a personality test. I took the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator because I was bored at work. And I got the results from the test and said that I was a complete asshole for wasting my time. So that's going to be my personality type. I think that's the same results everyone's going to get if you take time out of your day to complete an online personality test. But hey, sometimes boredom overcomes. And what to do when boredom overcomes? Well, you should hit and like and subscribe and always tune in and rewatch every episode of ARMANOgeddon. Tell the friends, tell the world. You're on the edge. You're on the cutting edge of technology. Recorded on an iPad, being held up by a ladder for painters. Thank you for tuning in to ARMANOgeddon episode number 5, and I will see you next week. Make sure to get moving out there.